Hi everybody, this is Dr. Julie Quinn, and I am going to introduce you to Module 1 content in our 421 class focusing on new media writing and publishing. Okay, so you've got two gradable assignments this week and a lot of video watching and reading and prep for the setup for this class. And so let's just take a quick spin through it so you can kind of see what's happening here. The Module 1 overview shows us that the learning objectives of this week are to compose an author biography and to compose a written description of an authorial identity, right? Who are we and what sets us apart, makes us a little bit different as writers from others, okay? So the module at a glance says that you're going to complete a variety of activities from reading to discussions to journal entries. You're also going to review the projects that are forthcoming so you get a sense of, okay, what are we building toward? Okay, so the final project 1 and 2 guidelines are linked here in this overview. They'll be repeated later as well, so you don't have to remember to come back here to find them. There's a bit of redundancy built into this sort of class setup. You'll read this article, Writing an Author Bio. It is not linked here. It's linked in an upcoming page in Module 1. You'll submit an initial post introducing yourself and your author biography into a class discussion, because what's great is you get to see where your other classmates are on the biography, and we'll get a chance to, I'll even critique my own little professor bio as part of this discussion. I think it's interesting to sort of go back and reflect on how we introduce ourselves to our audiences. Okay, you will have assigned chapters of a course textbook, when to get an author website, and that 21st century authorial identity discussions, because the way that we frame our own writers' identities are going to be drastically different than the way that quite successful writers did in the early and mid 20th century even. So we'll talk about those distinct differences and what's worthwhile for us to, how do we approach this in a way that benefits our brand, our style of writing, and really intrigues an audience. Okay, and then you get a chance to look at 10 different author websites to sort of get a sense of the possibilities. You'll post your assignment in the identity journal. That is not seen by any of your classmates. That's just a between you and me kind of text. And remember, the discussion is classmates sort of sinking in and sharing these ideas with one another. Okay, so here's where we go. The module overview has an interesting discussion about writer platforms, so take a look at that. We've got Mary Sullivan's discussion of that 21st century authorial identity. Okay, and just a little bit of an overview of some of the writers that I think we're predominantly fond with. And one of the things that I don't think is mentioned here about J.K. Rowling in the course setup is the fact that J.K. Rowling has significantly damaged her brand with some of her current sort of social positions. And I just saw a news article that talked about how some of the stars of the Harry Potter series, Emma Watson in particular, said that they would continue to participate in Harry Potter related content as long as J.K. Rowling is not involved. So your presence in the world as an author can be affected by the positions that you take that may or may not have any direct relationship to the content and the writing. So just sort of keep that in mind as well, that that's an interesting case study that you can continue to follow as you work through not just this module, because I think that where Rowling sort of ends up socially remains to be seen. So here are the required resources as we work through module 1. Writing an author bio, examples of bios. It's perfectly fine, by the way, to model based on the examples you see, based on like an organizational concept. But of course, all the writing will be your own. You've got your textbook built in right here. We've got this how to build an author platform video. This is a really good video. You don't have to watch it so much as you want to listen to it. Listen to it as you're commuting, as you're making dinner, as you're going on a walk. I think that it provides some insight from a successful author's perspective. And I think it's a very sort of everyman or every person approach to it, which I think is helpful for us. When to get the website, another video about establishing that digital presence, Then, of course, additional insights on platform. You can link to the career module there. And then we've got that list of praiseworthy author websites. You may find with some of your own authors that one of my favorite fiction authors is Robert McCammon, for example. And I happen to be a part of the fan Facebook page, because what's really interesting is that McCammon he has a blog, and he's got, and maybe we'll go over this later in the week. I'll take a look at his web presence, but he's not active in the management of the Facebook page. But what's great about that page is that he has a trusted compatriot who kind of runs it for him. So as a successful author, you don't always have to be on the front lines if you have a team in place once you're that successful to help you manage it. And what's really great about that social media presence on Facebook is the opportunity for fans to share fan artwork, for notices about rare copies of text, and where, like a particular version or edition of a book, and where does it appear. And so web presence will eventually go beyond your own platform into the platforms that you sort of control or manage. So keep that in mind as well. I actually am thinking about that a lot. I'm going to create a video on Robert McCammon. And if you haven't read him, give him a shot. So additional support. You're not required to look at these texts, but it's something to consider, especially if you feel like you're not ready to sort of create that author bio. So the discussion, introduction and author biography in your initial post. Remember, posts are due a little bit earlier in the week, and your responses are due by Sunday. So if we take a look at that discussion rubric, let's just double check timeliness. Your initial posts are Thursday. You respond to 2 of your classmates, and that's something that you've done before. Note as well that your author biography should not be long. It should be concise. It should be detailed, but it shouldn't be wordy, because readers aren't going to want to read 4 pages of your bio. Generally speaking, they actually want to get to the text. So consider that, and then your response provide feedback to the extent to which their biography seems consistent, right? And what questions would you ask that are not yes/no questions? So keep that in mind as you develop your discussion. Okay. Your Between You and Me assignment is the 1-2 journal, authorial identity. In your readings, you gained insight. You have to really tackle watching those videos and doing those readings before you can participate in the journal. But I'm curious as to insights into the different platforms, why they're important, how they're used. And like, I'm going to evaluate Robert McCammon's platforms. I'd be curious to see which ones sort of you're evaluating, the ones presented from class, or ones that you've found in your own research. If you're interested in writing vampire novels, you look at Anne Rice, Charlaine Harris. Robert McCammon has written a vampire novel, or Bram Stoker, although we would consider a much more older text with a very sort of different identity. Authors who have passed away won't really have a web presence, but I'd be curious to see what sort of author biographies that they had any hand in. So you can go back and you can look at even 20th century authors like Hemingway and sort of see how did they promote their work. That'd be really interesting. But what you're doing in this journal entry is you're looking at how others have established their identity, but your goal is establishing your own. What is your brand? And then, of course, there's that discussion about Anne Rice there. Remember, in addition to fulfilling the assignment, this work, hopefully, fingers crossed, will become part of your professional platform. So you're doing work for an academic credit that will benefit your professional life as a writer. So you should include answers to these questions, not in yes or no responses, but develop the ideas behind them. With authors, do you aspire to be like? My authors that I aspire to be like would be Gary Jennings, Colleen McCullough, Robert McCammon. There are so many others, but those are the ones that stand out to me as I'm really interested in science fiction. Horror. Octavia Butler would be one of mine. But who do you aspire to be like? I really enjoy historical fiction. A lot of those authors write historical fiction, but I don't personally write historical fiction. So it's interesting to see who we aspire to be like and what lessons can we learn from them, even if it's genre transfer, like we're not writing in the genre as them. That's okay. What is unique about you as a writer? And will you use a pseudonym? So those are the questions that you'll consider in your sort of development of your journal entry. Sort of very self-reflective assignment. Now, this part 1-3 is not graded. It's just a heads up for you to take a look at project 1 and project 2 overviews, right? So you'll be creating an author platform for project 1 and then a synopsis of your writer's platform in final project 2. So take a look at in depth at these project guidelines and rubrics. In the weeks that you submit these projects, I will take much more time to go through them, to explain what students have done in the past, and sort of my preferences. And in addition to this, I will take the time to always go through the assignment rubric, because this is my grading contract with you, that I promise to grade you based on these categories and these sort of values related to each category. So that's week 1. It's sort of an easing into the work of the week. And if you have any questions on any of this, you can reach me via email. I'm excited to meet you in your discussions and to see your sort of authorial identities emerge across the next couple of weeks. Emerge for me, at least. You've had them for a while. Again, reach out if you have questions, and have a great week.